saw that there are 6 major functional areas which are important in any organization. And when you design information systems, you have to be able to cater to the requirements in all these functional areas. These functional areas we pointed out are production, marketing, materials management, finance, human resource development and research and development. Among these, we did talk about production. Not every organization may have really production, but most organizations will have. For instance, if you are really a company which is retailing materials like Food Mart, then you do not really produce anything, you only get things from your suppliers and then you market it. So, on the other hand, marketing is an important part of any organization, whether it be an organization like a motor car company or it be a food world kind of company which does these sales of all the materials they buy from their vendors, or even a company like Google, which is primarily based on the web, and their major product is effectively a search engine. So, they also have to have what I would call marketing, because marketing is very crucial in the case of any company. Particularly so if you are in the area of software design and try to market your software products, or even hardware design and hardware products. If you are making, say for instance, some personal computers, PCs or something equivalent to that, the company's future will very much depend upon how well you are able to market the product you make. It may be the best product, but unless the marketing is effective, one would not be able to make any kind of a profit for the company. So, marketing is an important aspect of any company. Besides marketing, of course, every company will have functional areas of finance, because without money nothing moves in this world. So, you have to have finance, and you have to have materials, that is material which you manage. I mean, but then materials may be there definitely in most companies, including for instance a web based company like Google. Their materials are primarily the servers which they have to buy, and they have to maintain the servers, they have to have a huge bank of servers and deploy them and so on. So, materials are part of any company. And apart from that, human resource. No company can act without people, and people are the most important part of any organization. And the people, how smart they are, how satisfied they are, makes a lot of difference to particularly software companies. Software companies depend upon the intellectual labor of people. So, their production is primarily software or writing programs or developing systems. So, for them these are all done by people. So, unless the people are satisfied and the people are productive, the company is not going to make a reasonable product in reasonable time. So, managing human resources in any organization is a very important part. Research and development is extremely important in all the newer technologies, particularly in telecommunications, in computing, in even motor cars which are being made, in search engines and other types of web based products. It may not be all that important in companies like Food Mart, which really are just selling. Research and development may not be an important aspect for them, but in general the all the 6 functional areas will be there in most organizations, and at least 4 of them will be there in almost every organization. So, now we will look at marketing at some length. As usual, we look at the requirements of information under the categories of strategic requirements, tactical requirements, and operational requirements. And among these, the strategic requirements are really determined by top management, which have an overview of the business, and they want to kind of grow the business in the long run. And tactics are by the second level of management, who, having decided on a particular strategy, try to make the best out of that strategy in terms of what I would call tactics, which last time I pointed out an example of a cricket team, where strategy is something which is decided by the coach and the captain and the selectors and so on, and the tactics is on the field by the captain to win the match. So, similarly, to make the company profitable, tactics is extremely important, and this tactical information is what is the major work which is done by the middle level managers. And of course, operational information is voluminous, and that is required for day to day running, and they require a lot of that operational information in order to be able to have informed decisions at the tactical level as well as the strategic level. Unless you process a lot of day to day information, the people on the top will not know really what is going on day to day. They do not need to know everything, but they need to have a digest of what is the state of operations and how their strategy has impacted on the operations. Is the strategy led to better operations, or strategy is led to worse operations? So, they can change their strategy based on the results of the operations, which is obtained by the operational information. So, coming to marketing, as I said, marketing is the most important part of the working of any company, and even in a company such as Google, the marketing strategy has been extremely important to make the company prosper. One may wonder, what does a search engine company, where do they make their money? And in fact, they have to make money to survive, because they have to continuously improve their search engines, they get into new areas and so on. So, they have to have reasonable profit coming into their company for being able to be there for the long haul, and everybody is trying to compete with this kind of business. Now, the strategy which one has to look at is what are the markets, what are the new markets which are developing, and what are the competitors doing, and what is the technology and demographic forecasts and product changes. And these are the marketing primarily consists of methods of looking at what the competition also does, so that you can appropriately change your method of working. To look at an example of Google, what they started, when they started with this search engine, there are plenty of other search engines already in the market, and they had to make inroads into this market where there is already a lot of competition. So, what do? In order to get to the market, they give away free. So, they started giving away the Google free, in the sense that even today you can log on to google.com and search the web, and over some time by word of mouth and by people actually using it, they found that their search strategy and their search engine was performing much better than the existing search engines. So, there is a lot of people starting to move to using Google. Now, when they start using Google, that means there is actually improve it to survive. And in the meanwhile, of course, they can't be developing all the software free of cost and putting all the servers and so on with no revenue coming in. The original revenue, of course, came from some so-called venture capitalists who gave the money to get something started. But to sustain, you have to market. Now, the marketing is very interesting in this case, because people are used to this Google being free. So, suddenly you say, in order to use Google, you have to pay some money. Maybe very quickly your market will vanish. So, you have to take a strategy. So, their great strategic idea was that they went to the advertising people, and then they said, and lot of people use our search engines, and they search for a particular item on the web, like for instance, they may be searching for say information about cars. When they search for the information about the cars, then I will give, along with the results of the search, a little ad saying that your car is one of the best in the market and so on, but not because it is not non-ethical in the sense that he is only putting an advertisement for you, which synchronizes with the search which the person is doing. So, there is no point in giving some advertisement regarding Maggi noodles when somebody is looking for search. Okay. So, it is extremely important to kind of synchronize what you bring. So, that technology they developed with the result that they are able to synchronize the advertising with the search and getting the money from the advertisers. So, effectively they are getting money from Peter and then giving it free to Paul. Okay. And as far as we are concerned, we are very happy to continue to receive free search, and we do not particularly mind those ads as long as they are not intrusive. If they intrude and somebody else gives a better search engine without all those intrusions, very quickly people will desert Google and go to some other search engine. So, these have to be, people have to look out for the strategy, or the company must be to continuously look out for these problems. And if you take another example of motor cars. The motor cars, as you know, today in India there are many companies which are competing. On the one hand, there is the old Maruti, which has been there for the oldest company making many cars. Then there is this Hyundai which came up, and then there is Tata which also came up as a motor car, and there are other companies like Fiat and so on which are there in the market. There are at least about half a dozen companies in the market making cars. So, the top management has to take a particular strategic decisions of what do I do with the different models of my car, okay, and how do I look for new markets of my car. You know, the Indian market is somewhat getting saturated, in the sense that there are too many competitors and so on. So, do I look for say market in Sri Lanka, do I look for market in South Africa, or do I go to Far East, or do I go to Europe? So, these are issues in terms of looking for the markets and doing some kind of strategic decisions on either going to say a market like South Africa or Sri Lanka, or decide not to, because the top management may think that the logistics of being able to send the cars and getting profit out of that, and the local competition there to overcome that may be quite difficult. And Another strategic decision you may take is that the way in which a car is sold through a lot of agents who are there in the as so-called partners who market these cars, and then they give service after marketing. So, your car fails after you buy it, then they would essentially try to help you and get the car set right free of cost, and even take your car from your home for free servicing or for free repairs, at least for the first 1 year or 2 years and so on. So, these are issues the strategic people have to decide. And we have to look also at the competitive strategy. If suppose somebody else is giving some kind of free service, it says 3 years there is free service and I am giving 1 year free service, is it worth going for a 3-year service, or it is not worth going for a 3-year service? That kind of decision one has to take. And you also have to look at the demographic forecast. In other words, what I mean by demographic forecast is how is the population growing and at what age groups are people there. In fact, India has a large number of young people who are getting into the labour market and starting to make a reasonable amount of money. And now you have to see whether you have to have a strategy to meet the requirements of these younger people, and they may not require a large car. You may just try a small car as a beginning thing. So, Maruti strategy has to come up with a small car at a low cost. So, once you buy that low cost car and get used to it, then when you become slightly richer and have more money to dispose, then you may decide that you will go for a Maruti itself with a better model or more expensive model. And of course, they have a strategy which may be that if you are an ex Maruti owner and you want to upgrade to a new Maruti, I will take back your old car and pay you some money, or I will give you concession on the new car. These are the kinds of strategies which a top management has to decide, so that once they get a customer, they try to keep that customer happy right through possibly his career, so that he goes on being loyal to you also. So, they can give some called loyalty bonus and things that type. So, this is essentially what the companies try to do in strategy. Now, in order to do this strategy, you also have to look at the tactics of what you how does middle management kind of help to use the strategy and make it work. So, you have to look at, for instance, how do you advertise the fact that a strategic decision is taken, that if you are an existing owner of a small car and you want to upgrade to a bigger model, then I will give you a concession, or I will take back your old car. This has got to be advertised. People should know. So, what technique should I use? How widely should I advertise? How much it is going to cost me? Is the return on the advertising revenue worth the cost? Also, today there are plenty of different avenues for advertising. You can advertise in TV, you can advertise in newspapers, you can advertise on the web. As I said, Google's major revenue is advertising revenue. You can advertise on the web. So, there are so many different areas through which you can advertise, that you have to decide which is more cost effective. So, you really have to have information and analysis of information in terms of the impact of certain types of advertising on the increase in revenue. Suddenly you find that you put a TV slot and you found that because the TV slot which you had, suddenly people start inquiring about your car and you must have feedback on that, then you know that this TV slot has really helped. Okay. And so, that is the kind of thing which I mean by saying the analysis of impact. And also surveys of customer preferences. In other words, you try to look at who prefers what type of car. Do they go for Tata car, or they go for Maruti car, and so on, and then you ask the question, why are you doing this? And one way of doing this is by sending out questionnaires to people, but nobody answers questionnaires because it's a bore, to fill up all that form and returning it and so on. So sometimes you use a tactic of saying that, well, if you fill up a form and send it to us, and I receive the form, then you are eligible for a lottery, which a free car, and so on. So little bit of incentive for you to fill that form, but most people may not think, after all, the possibility of getting a lottery car is so little that you may not think it is worth spending your time in doing that. So normally people you have to have a tactical method also of whether to use this form method or to send people to inquire from house to house, but then people cost a lot of money to go and inquire. So this again determining the cost benefit of all these methods. And now what is the correlation between prices and sales? If I reduce the price, is sales going up? Okay. Or should I sometimes what happens is, if the price is made low, people think it's a cheap product and they don't buy it. They go for an expensive one because they think an expensive product is better quality. So there is also psychology involved in this. So pricing it at the right level is an important tactical decision one has to take. Like for instance, if you take say a computer, you are trying to manufacture computers in the market and sell computers in the market. Now everybody talks about the sub 10,000 rupees PC and so on. Okay. So is it really feasible to have that kind of a machine, even though people claim that sub 10,000 is now available? But the question is, what do you get with that sub 10,000? Okay. And is that machine fulfill all your requirements? So one has to also look at the look at the fact that by putting the sub 10,000 PC in the market, has my sales suddenly gone up? Okay. If it has gone up suddenly because of this lowering of price, maybe I can make my small product the margin of profit small and get my money through margin. That is the margin is small by volume. A huge volume is sold in a small margin, so total profit is quite high. A very interesting example of this was the tactic which was followed by Borland in the olden days, when they came up with a compiler for Pascal, and when they came up with a compiler for Pascal, they sold it at $49, okay, which is considered a very low price compared to the compilers which are already in the market, which are selling for thousands of dollars. Now when it is a $49 thing, immediately people started looking at it, because first of all they are concerned maybe it is not very reliable compiler. When they started using it, because the company started giving sample copies, when you started using it and you found it is as good as any in the market, suddenly the market size increased and lot of people, millions of copies are sold. And so even the margin on each copy is small. If you multiply a million by even $5 per copy, it becomes a huge amount. And interestingly, in software, the cost is not linearly proportional to the number of products the products which are sold. What I mean by this is, in a car there is a fixed cost for producing a car, and whenever you sell a car, the price of the car must be higher than the fixed cost of the car, and that is your profit margin. In the case of a software, your fixed cost is upfront, that is the amount of time you spent in developing that software and the number of people who work for it and so on. So, all your money is already gone in terms of creating that product. So, now the larger you sell, that cost is not going to go up for you, whereas your profit is going to go up for each new product, because the cost of a new software, this one more copy of the software is cost of a CD, and CD costs no money at all, really speaking, okay, compared to the cost of that software. So, the marginal cost of selling extra software is in terms of production cost is almost 0, whereas your profit is constant. So, profit can skyrocket if your volume goes up, okay, and that is essentially what they found. And this is a lesson learned by a lot of software suppliers. They said that it is better to kind of price it at a reasonable level and try to get volumes and make your product good quality, so it will sell by itself. And also the method of giving something free as a so called trial copy for something like a month, and the trial copy if you use for a month and feel satisfied, then you pay for it and keep it, otherwise I will kind of make it go away from your machine. So, these are the kinds of tactical methods which people follow. Now, the other tactical thing one has to do is about how to deploy your sales force. Okay, people have to say in any product you have to have some method of sales. Do you really have people going around selling, or is advertising sufficient for your selling? These are issues you really have to look at in terms of the sales force. Like in the case of, for instance, sale of books, there is sales force which goes to various booksellers and to college teachers and so on, and tries to promote the book. And so the sales force becomes very important to make the book known to the public and being available by putting it in the bookstore and so on. So, where do I deploy this sales force? Do I deploy it in North India or South India or East India or West India? For books, for instance, many of the companies are deploying a lot more people in South India, because the number of engineering colleges in South India is huge compared to the number of colleges, say, in North India. So, there is again a decision in terms of how to deploy. And what are the alternate marketing channels? Do I sell books by the web or by bookstores and so on? And do I have a special sales campaign? These are issues which tactics are important. The operational information which is important in marketing management is, as I said, to feed the tactics and strategy. We looked at the sales force deployment as a tactical decision. The operational decision is operational information required to take this tactical decision is to find out the sales analysis by regions, which customers, which salesperson sold and so on. And the operational information is very important to be able to also reward your better salespersons and so on. Suppose a particular salesperson in an area did exceedingly well. What normally companies do is to give some quotas to each salesperson, saying that you are supposed to sell this much. And if they exceed that quota by a considerable amount, then you have to give a bonus and make that thing, make him give an incentive. So, that information should be available to find out whether he has exceeded quota or he is below quota. If he is below quota, of course, you have to warn him and so on. So, this is the computer continuously computes or determines actual sales, who is the salesperson in charge, and so you have a table which is used operational information, and then you give an exception report based on the table, giving the people who have exceeded the target by a considerable amount, and the tactical people may have tell you anything which exceeds 20% of the base amount, you will let me know, or if it is below 10% of the base amount, you let me know. If it is below 10%, that means the guy is not doing too well, but above 20% means he is doing extremely well. So then I can take corrective action. If a person is just going straight ahead and keeping up his quota, I won't get informed at all at the tactical level. So the guy continues, and that is the kind of thing which because I don't require I shouldn't have too much information. So similarly the question of market share and trends. There is like what is the market share again is computed by looking at all the other competitors, what their total market, how much did they sell, and then this information is detailed information on how much they sold in Delhi, how much they sold in Chandigarh, how much they sold in Chennai, how much they sold in Hyderabad, and so on. The whole lot of data is available as at the operational level, and this data has got to be digested for tactics. And operational information like seasonal variations. We are selling gold jewelry, for instance. Gold jewelry, there is always a variation in festive season like Diwali. There is a lot more sales of gold than during other parts of the year. And in South India during something like Sankranti, there is a lot more sale, or during the New Year's, Yugadi or something, there is a lot more sales. So all these things you have to look at the variations, and that is essentially done by collecting the data. And when you change the model of a car, so like Maruti for instance, when they went from 800 to something else, okay, and was there a change, perceptible change in the demand for that car? That again is a detailed information, and one has to analyze that. And how are your sales outlets doing? How are they performing? This is again detailed information, and one has to digest it. And cost of the campaign, what exactly did the campaign cost, and how much is the benefit. So these are the things in terms of what I would say lots of detail, which has to kind of get digested. Materials management is really how to manage the requirements of materials for the organization. Like if you are a car maker, then you require a lot of materials. Like for instance, you require seats of the car, you require steering wheels, you require horn, you require tires, you require lights, headlights, you have umpteen items, okay. And so with the umpteen items which are there, you have to decide on whether what kind of development should I have for vendors. Like, you know, it's not possible for every car company to make all their materials internally. Like suppose you want to make say a horn in your car company. A horn is a low cost item, but it is a crucial item, and it may not be worth your while to do that, because your labor cost may be very high, and it may not be worth really putting that if the quality is good. So you may take a studied decision that horns are important, but I don't want to kind of invest a lot of money in that and break all these things. So why don't I develop a vendor or a supplier? I will get hold of a small scale person in the nearby area, entrepreneur, and tell him that look here, I have a requirement for 50,000 horns every 2 or 3 months, but can you make the 50,000 horns, and also give him the know-how to make it, because a small scale person may not have the know-how, and train him and to do that and so on, and then you develop that vendor. Once he becomes a good vendor, then your headache is removed, that is, he makes good horn for you per your specification. Also the horn maker tries to sell that horn to other companies also, and then he will thrive, and it is in your advantage, because if his volume goes up, then his cost will go down and you also get the benefit. So vendor development for critical items is an important part of any any materials management. Similarly, the development of for a publishing company, developing a paper vendor. So saying I require this quality of paper, so can you produce that quality of paper, and essentially try to develop that person. And another important strategic decision is what is the optimal level of my inventory. In other words, suppose I buy horns for my car and I expect that there is about, I will sell 50,000 cars. Do I buy 50,000 horns ahead of time? And if I do not sell 50,000 cars and sell only 30,000, I will be left holding 20,000 horns for which I have paid, and I am not getting any result. So that is a very bad thing to do. In fact, many of the Japanese companies, their major method is to so called just in time manufacturing. They do not keep anything at all as a buffer in their company or inventory in their company. They expect the vendor to supply the item as and when required within a certain specified time. Like I say, within 8 hours I require this item, they should be ready to sell it, send it to you. This is possible in many areas where the reliability of the entire system is very good in terms of transport, in terms of general situation and so on. It is somewhat like that. Let me give a very homely example. Suppose you know that in your house there is going to be 24 hours of water coming continuously, and water never fails. Whenever you open the tap, water comes. Then what will you do? You will never fill up buckets in your house, or you will not have a sump or an overhead tank and things like that. Because as you open the tap, you can be assured that the water will come. That is called just in time water. When you require it, the water comes. But if it turns out that the supply is irregular for various reasons, that 2 days only you get, once in 2 days only you get water, then what do? You fill up all your buckets, enough for 2 days. And this is, I would say, in some sense wasteful, because you may not use all that water, but you want to be err on the wrong side, because you do not want to be got caught without water. So you will overstock water. Same thing in a country, suppose the transport system is not very reliable, and there is a lot of delay in transporting of items, then I will make a buffer stock or inventory to cater for that transport delay, and also for unforeseen disruptions like strikes, bunds and things like that, which are not normally common. Things like bunds are not common in countries like Japan. So they do not have to worry about this large inventory. Many of the Indian companies are forced to keep a inventory because of this problem. Okay. But that is a strategic decision. How much do you keep? How reliable is your system going to be, and so on. determining proportion of materials needed, I mean and reducing variety of inventories. In other words, another important thing in terms of proportion of materials needed and also proportion of items on which I specifically look out for has to be kind of looked at with some detail. And reducing variety is extremely important. In other words, the more the variety, the more the different types of inventory I have to keep. In fact, one of the interesting things strategy which IBM used to adopt, even today in many computer manufacturers adopt, is that they fully load up a machine and then they remove some features in the software and give it to you, because the variety is only one variety is there, and then when you order the more things, then they will enable that part. Like they used to have an electric typewriter which could type both Greek letters and English letters, and the design was such that both Greek and English letters was possible. So when you did not ask for Greek, the price was lowered, but the machine was the same. They disabled the Greek part in the machine, and when somebody wanted the Greek part, they enabled that part, because as you know, many of these machines are nowadays driven by software, and you can do that. So there is reducing variety in terms of the profitability is better, because you only make one type. Now tactical information in materials management is in terms of as I said, you develop vendors, and when you develop a vendor, you don't want to have a monopoly vendor, because if there is a monopoly vendor, then after some time you start asking for whatever price he thinks you can pay. So you really have to have multiple vendor development. The strategy may be to in fact have more than one vendor developed, and tactics will be, having developed 3 vendors, how do I break up my orders among these 3 based on their performance. So come up with performance measures. Performance measures may be in terms of quality of what they are producing, responsiveness with which they meet my requests, and in terms of cost also. I mean, are they the three vendors? One of them may cost more, a little bit more, but his material may be much better quality. So I have to have some method of measuring that, and also optimal reorder levels. Optimal reorder levels, what it really means is that when the inventory goes below a certain value, at what value below which it goes do I decide on reordering. This is essentially related to the buffer. If it is just in time inventory business, then there is no question of reorder level. Reorder level is 0. Whenever I get to almost 0, I ask by phone to send the supplies. But if it is a situation when unreliable supply for some reason, then you have to decide based on the unreliability. Like water, there are 2 buckets or 3 buckets and so on. Depends upon your consumption pattern and how quickly, how quickly can the new supply come. Okay. And items to shops versus standard needs. What it means is that in an assembly shop which is assembling cars, if they are assembling 1000 cars a day, you need 4000 tires plus 1 spare tire. Now you have to have the 4000 tires ready, but you may not put all those 4000 tires in front of him, but you may send it in groups periodically, determine the period and how to issue, what are the standard needs and standard times. is a tactical decision. Controlling the high value inventory. In fact, one of the interesting things most companies do is what is called an ABC analysis. That is, they look at the cost of the inventory item and divide it up into 3 groups. An A group, which is a very high cost item, a B group, the medium cost item, C group is very low cost item, I don't have to worry too much about it, about reorder level, because it is not critical. Like C level may be nuts and bolts, a B level may be horns and mirrors and so on. A level may be gearboxes or engine blocks, which are very expensive. So, I pay more attention to the high value inventory and not as much attention to C, because it does not really matter too much to me. So, if I concentrate on the high value items, in the long run I will save a lot more money. So, that is what is done, controlling high value inventory. Determining impact of material cost and procurement with design changes in new product introduction. In other words, suppose I want to change the model of a car, then to what extent will the old items work? Do I require new materials? Do I have to develop new vendors? How will the cost of materials be impacted? So, these are things which one has to be concerned about whenever a model is changed. And operational, of course, is that a lot of detail in terms of excess and deficient items received from a vendor, list of items rejected because they are poor quality, what are critical items received. So, I can immediately tell the manager who is waiting for that critical item, let us come, you can start using it. So, quickly that information has to percolate upstairs. If stores in transit, because I am waiting for something, if I know it is in transit, I don't have to reorder very in a big hurry. I know it will come and how much is already come being inspected. I can expedite inspection if I am running out of that material. So, these are operational information which day to day I give to the, in terms of the what I really mean by this is knowing the critical item, the exception report can go to the tactical manager saying that critical item which you are really looking at, it is an inspection. So, now he will ask the inspectors to expedite it, saying don't inspect other things, do this first and send it back. So, this operational information is important. Value of inventory in hand, what is inventory which is in my hand, so that I don't have too much of dead stock, because if there is too much of inventory in hand and it is too expensive, then I am losing money because it is dead. So, the value has to be known to the so that it can be informed to the top management. So, day to day the value should be available. What are goods received, what are rejected, what is issued, these are all details which whenever some goods come, I have to have a record of what came, what has been rejected, what has been issued, because once it is taken into stock, then you have to inform the stores people that it is ready to be taken into stock, and once it goes to the store, you have to tell the finance people that money has to be paid because the item has been taken into stock. So, then he has to generate a check. This is operational information. Daily these things have to happen, as and when an item is taken into stock and store, a payment has to be made. If the payment is delayed, then you have a bad relations with vendor, and so later on he may start reneging on supplies, starving you of supplies and things like that. So this operational information is very important. Finance is the next major item which we have to consider in some detail, because I said no company can really work without money, and so strategies in terms of how do I finance my operation. Like I said, I give an example of Google. The financing at the beginning was a whole year of venture capitalist money. That is, some fellows gave me venture capital and I used that venture capital money to be able to finance my first year of operation. After that, I had to find out some method of financing. I had to get a revenue stream. Some income has to be generated. Now the method of generating an income is the interesting top management strategy. But how much money is required to sustain the operation is something which a finance manager has to worry about. How do I price is another important part of any company. That's just, I will give an example in fact of the pricing idea of Borland for Pascal compilers. Similarly, in India now, one of the most widely selling product is a accounting product called Tally, which a lot of people buy for accounting. Now those people have to decide what pricing should I do if this particular product has got to be adopted by small shops. If I decide that if I tell a small shopkeeper who has a computer that to have an accounting package from me it is going to cost you 12,000 rupees, he may say, well, the computer itself cost me only 15,000 rupees, why should I pay 12,000 rupees for software? That is a normal reaction of any person. So they have to really look at, is the pricing appropriate for the customer to whom we are selling. So the strategy may be that if I want to sell a lot more, maybe I make a special dispensation in terms of kind of cutting down on features like bells and whistles, as they call it, unnecessary features, and give a bare bones or core and price it at say 500 rupees or 1000 rupees, whatever, and survive on volume. So these are kinds of pricing policies. Tax planning. The tax planning means that every year, as you know, taxes are inevitable. Somebody put it, death and taxes are the two certainties in life. And so you have to pay your tax and you have to find methods of planning for that. In fact, certain companies, what they really do is to put their production in some small state like Pondicherry or Goa or somewhere where the taxation is very low, or they make it there and sell it to another state, maybe the taxation is lower. So you decide on where to do this, and tax planning to be able to make some profitability. The important point is that tax planning does not mean that you try to cheat the government by not paying tax. That is wrong. Okay, that means is that you follow the rules of the game. The rules of the game are laid out by the budget and the government. Within the rules of the game, what is the strategy I follow to reduce my impact of taxes? So that is essentially what is tax planning. And tax planning is there of course for both large companies or even for individuals. One has to kind of have so-called tax planning guides which are coming to reduce your overall taxation burden within the rules. Okay. So these are the issues which one has to be concerned about in finance management. And tactics at the middle level, you normally come up with a budget every year, and you look at actually the what budget should be there. How do I budget for various things? In other words, how much, like if I am running a software company, how much do I budget for buying new laptops or new desktops? How much do I allocate for sales or marketing? How much do I allocate for the people who are going to work for me, human resource? Okay. So I look at all the expenses like the human resource, marketing cost, the rental for the place where I am going to have that software company, and I have to be concerned about that. In fact, it turns out that certain areas, like suppose you go to downtown, there is Nariman Point in Bombay, the cost of 10 square foot of area for a small place for a software engineer to sit and work in front of his PC costs more money for the company than his salary. So you may decide that there is no point, you have to budget it. But you budget it, you decide that the budget is this much, you put it in Nariman Point. So you may decide that it is not worth putting it in Nariman Point. A strategic decision may be taken to kind of shift it to out of the way place, maybe a suburb where the rental is much lower, and maybe people are even happier to come to work there. Or now the new trend is there with all this internet and wideband and all that. They say don't have to travel to work, you work from home, and you do all your software development at home. And for working from home is again something which is possible in the case of software. So you have to really look at that. In other words, the finance management would say that if the cost of the location is becoming very important, and I may decide to let my employees work from home, but have a meeting place for all of them to meet, say once in 2 days or once in 3 days, to assess progress, look at the other teams and things like that. So there are many items of tactics which one has to follow. And if many companies, the major problem is that they already sold the item, but they have not received the money. So you have to kind of track the what you have billed versus what you have received, and there is a large outstanding. Somebody has to take care of that. See, so the top manager must know what is the large outstanding payments. Meeting you in the next modules. Thank you.